She was laughing in the hallway, loud, careless laughter I hadn't heard in years, and it wasn't for me. I stood in the kitchen holding a dripping bag of groceries because the bottom had torn open in the driveway, and I hadn't even made it to the fridge before I heard it. Her laugh, followed by a lower voice, a man's voice, followed by her saying, "Stop. You're gonna make me pee myself." It wasn't flirting. It was worse. It was that deep, easy comfort you only get with someone you want to be with. I didn't say anything. I quietly cleaned up the smashed peaches on the floor, one by one. She walked in 20 minutes later, still glowing, still catching her breath. She didn't notice the mess. She didn't ask where I'd been. She just grabbed her giant glass of cucumber water, glanced at her phone, and said, "Don't wait up tonight." That was it. Like she was going to run a quick errand. Like she wasn't about to disappear until 2 a.m. again. Like I hadn't been asking her for months to spend one night, just one, at home, curled up on the couch like we used to. She used to be tired. Every single night. Tired of work, tired of stress, tired of me. Too tired to talk. Too tired to cuddle. Too tired to touch. Now, she had all the energy in the world. I didn't say anything that night, either. I just turned off her phone plan the next morning. No warning. No explanation. No text. The first thing she noticed wasn't the service being cut. It was that her usual $150 transfer hadn't gone through. That was always my "thanks for staying home" gift. Ironic, since she hadn't stayed home in weeks. Then came the excuses. She sat me down on the couch 2 days later with a fake frown and told me she was going through a transformative phase. That she needed space to rediscover herself. She made it sound like a TED Talk. I asked her one question. "Who's Avery?" Her mouth twitched. "You went through my phone?" "No," I said. "You said his name in your sleep." "For times." She turned pale. For a second. Then she laughed again. That same carefree laugh. Except this time, it was aimed straight at me. "Well, you're that guy now." I said nothing. I just walked upstairs and opened the safe. I changed the access code. Moved the emergency cash. Closed the joint account. Froze the card she uses at her favorite coffee shop. That night, she wasn't tired. She was furious. But for the first time in a year, I slept like a rock. The morning after I shut off the money valve, she tiptoed around me like she was trying to figure out which version of me she was dealing with, the predictable pushover or someone new. I didn't say a word. I sat at the table drinking instant coffee like it was scotch. She stood across from me in her lemon print robe, clutching her phone like a lifeline. "Did the card get declined for some reason?" she finally asked, casual, too casual, like she wasn't already panicking inside. I shrugged and kept stirring. No explanations. No rescue. By noon she was pacing. By 2, she'd left the house, wearing tight jeans and a top she hadn't worn since her honeymoon body phase. I watched her drive off in the car I paid for, still under my name, and disappear down the road. She didn't know I'd checked the dash cam logs the night before. She didn't know I'd already seen Avery. Big arms. Stupid grin. The kind of guy who posts gym selfies with captions like "grind never stops." That evening she came home acting sweet. Sickly sweet. Like honey that's been sitting out too long. "I've been thinking we should do something together this weekend," she said, brushing my shoulder with a hand that used to mean something. Like a getaway. Something to reconnect. I almost choked. "Reconnect?" I asked, not because I didn't hear her, but because I needed to buy time to contain my disbelief. She nodded. "You've seemed off. And I want to fix things. We've been distant." I stared at her. She really thought this would work. The performative concern. The conveniently timed affection. And worst of all, the fact that she clearly assumed I was too stupid to see the correlation between her lifestyle collapsing and her sudden urge to reconnect. I wanted to scream. Where was this 2 months ago when I begged you to stay in and watch a movie with me? Where was this when you said I was emotionally suffocating just for asking if you were okay? But I didn't say any of that. Instead, I said, "Sure. Let's do something. How about we go to that lakeside cabin your mom always raves about?" She blinked. That wasn't the answer she expected. "Yeah, you and me. 3 days. No phones. No Wi-Fi. Just us." She hesitated. "That place doesn't even have reception," she said, trying to sound playful, but I could already see the panic behind her eyes. "Exactly," I said, smiling. Perfect time to reconnect. That night, she didn't leave. She stayed in. Sat beside me on the couch. Laughed too hard at a sitcom she used to ignore. She even touched my hand. But her smile didn't reach her eyes. Not once. She thought I was playing a game. She had no idea I was already 10 moves ahead, because earlier that day, I'd been to the cabin, and what I found there changed everything. It's funny how peaceful the lake looked that morning. Still, serene, like the surface of it was holding its breath. When I got to the cabin, I wasn't expecting to find anything out of place. I wasn't even sure why I'd gone. Maybe just to feel something again. To see if a place untouched by Clarabelle still remembered who I used to be. I had the spare key from her mom. She gave it to me 2 Christmases ago when Clarabelle forgot we'd even made plans with them. If she ever drifts too far, her mom said, handing me the small silver key in a velvet pouch, bring her back here. She always centers herself near the water. I should have known then. You don't give someone a key to a place meant for fixing something unless you expect it to break. The cabin smelled like old pine and stale cinnamon. The curtains were drawn, and the fridge was humming, still stocked. That was the first thing that struck me as strange. Her mother hadn't been up here since summer, and the expiry dates on the juice and almond milk in the fridge? All from last week. I checked the trash bin under the sink. Empty. Too clean. Then I noticed the coffee mug on the windowsill, still stained with fresh lipstick, a dark plum color Clarabelle had only recently started wearing. My stomach twisted. I turned around slowly, like I was expecting someone to be standing behind me. The place wasn't just recently used, it was lived in. I walked toward the small bookshelf near the fireplace, not even sure what I was looking for, and that's when I saw it. A folded piece of paper wedged between 2 cookbooks. My name wasn't on it. In fact, nothing was. But the handwriting? Hers. I unfolded it carefully, hands starting to shake before I even read the first line. It's not that I hate him. It's worse. I feel nothing. The letter wasn't addressed to anyone. It read more like a diary entry, something meant to be hidden. But there was no mistaking what it was about. He drains me. He's just there. Always asking if I'm okay, like he's trying to be the hero of a story that bores everyone. Even me. My throat closed. I kept reading even though I didn't want to. Avery makes me feel alive. I don't have to pretend with him. I can laugh. I can breathe. I'm not the exhausted, guilty wife. I'm just me. There was no apology. No confusion. Just clarity. Cold and certain. Like she'd already said goodbye to me in her mind. I stood there, surrounded by everything I thought was still mine, and realized I was the only one who didn't know I'd been replaced. My hand brushed over a phone charger on the bedside table. 2 pillows with 2 indents. Her perfume still lingering in the sheets. I took one last look around the cabin. Not because I wanted to remember it, but because I knew this place wasn't meant for both of us anymore. It was hers and his. And now I had to decide what to do with what I knew. When I got back home that night, she was waiting for me with 2 mugs of cocoa, pretending everything was normal. But the moment she saw my face, she knew something had changed. She asked, "Is everything okay?" And I said, "Yeah, everything makes sense now." The silence between us that evening didn't feel like peace. It felt like something hanging from the ceiling, invisible but heavy. She kept sipping her cocoa, stealing glances at me over the rim of her mug. I sat across from her, trying to keep my hands steady, wondering how long she'd keep up the act. Would she even tell me? Would she admit anything? Or had she already erased me so thoroughly in her mind that I was just some background character, sitting across the table, still dumb enough to pour her drinks and ask about her day? "I was thinking," she said at last, setting the mug down with a soft clink, "we should plan something for our anniversary." I nearly laughed. Not because it was funny, but because she genuinely said it like we were still living in the same story. "Sure," I said, voice flat. "Why not? I mean, we've been through a rough patch," she continued, trying to sound optimistic, "but we've made it work before, right? You've always been dependable. Dependable. The way someone might describe a vacuum. Reliable. Silent. Always ready to clean up a mess that wasn't mine." I nodded slowly, not trusting myself to say more. If I did, it would all come pouring out. The cabin, the letter, the lipstick, the fact that she'd used that space, that bed, and maybe even that same mug for someone else. I wasn't ready to explode. I wanted her to crumble first. That night, I waited until she fell asleep, then went into the bathroom and opened the bottom drawer where she kept her wellness stash, supplements, creams, and her second phone. She thought I didn't know. She kept it hidden beneath a pouch of lavender bath salts. I'd seen it once by accident and pretended not to notice. I turned it on. No password. As if she believed I'd never dare to look. The screen came to life with a string of messages, not from Avery, but from someone labeled C. A woman. Or at least I thought so. I read the messages, and they weren't what I expected. No gossip. No concern. Just, still using the cabin? Don't forget to wash the sheets this time. How did he not figure it out yet? He sounds like he's losing grip. You sure you're safe? Safe. As if I was a threat. Me, the guy who couldn't even confront her about pulling away, who made tea instead of arguments, who curled up alone every night in the other room so she could recharge. I scrolled further and found a voice message. My hand hovered over it. I shouldn't have. I know that. But I did. Her voice came through, sharp and light at the same time. Honestly, I don't even have to lie anymore. He's so passive, it's like he's doing me a favor. I just say I'm tired, and he disappears. It's convenient. I sat on the closed toilet lid for 10 minutes. Not crying. Not yelling. Just existing. Like I had for the last year and a half. And yet, even then, some part of me still wanted to fix it. Still wanted her to look at me and mean it when she said she loved me. Still wanted it to be some misunderstanding. That's the sickest part. But I knew there was no coming back. Something had broken cleanly, like a bone snapped in silence. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in years. I called in sick to work. And then I did something else I never thought I'd do. I booked a private investigator. Because if I was going to let this fall apart, I was going to know exactly how deep the rot went. I didn't expect him to show up in a brown van. That's the first thing I remember about the investigator. His name was Wallace, and he looked more like a hardware store cashier than someone who uncovers hidden lives. But maybe that's what made him good at what he does. He didn't look like a threat. No one would think twice about him sitting in a parked vehicle with tinted windows and a disposable coffee cup. We met in the corner booth of a failing diner on the edge of town, the kind with sticky menus and a jukebox that hadn't worked since the 90s. I picked it because I was too paranoid to meet anywhere nice. I kept thinking, what if she sees me? What if someone she knows does? I was already walking around like a man with something to hide, even though I was the one who'd been betrayed. Wallace didn't talk much. He slid a plain envelope across the table and said, everything's in there. Video, timestamps, names. And something you probably weren't expecting. He left before I could ask what that meant. I waited until I got home to open it. I sat at my desk in the dim light, hand shaking, like I was about to defuse a bomb. And in a way, I was. Because once I looked, I knew I could never go back to pretending. I wouldn't be able to unread it or unsee it or unknow what I'd been blindly funding all this time. The first few photos weren't surprising. Clarabelle getting out of a silver sedan that didn't belong to us. Clarabelle walking into a bar with Avery, his arm a little too familiar around her waist. Clarabelle in a cafe, laughing at something across the table with her hand resting on someone's wrist. But then came the receipts. Hotel bookings. 2 separate weekends when she'd told me she was off the grid for a meditation retreat. One booking wasn't even under her name, it was under mine. My card. My account. She'd used my identity to pay for a room she spent with someone else. I was numb. But what really broke me wasn't the affair. It wasn't even the money. It was the footage, black and white, grainy, from a traffic camera. It showed my car. My exact vehicle. Driving through a toll station in a part of the state I'd never been to. Except I wasn't driving. She was. And the passenger wasn't Avery. It was someone else. The image was blurry, but the figure in the passenger seat looked older. Male. Wearing a dark suit. Sunglasses. And Clarabelle was laughing, her hand on his knee. I scrolled further. Wallace had flagged something. Client should be aware. Subject may be involved in more than one active extramarital relationship. One individual identified as Carter Langley, 52, married, Senior VP of Finance at Reynard Group. I felt physically sick. Avery wasn't the affair. He was the cover. The real one, the one she hid with more care, was someone with power, with influence, and with something to lose. That's why it had stayed secret. That's why she kept going to that cabin. Because it wasn't just about lust anymore. It was about leverage. My wife wasn't just bored. She was calculated. She didn't pull away because she was tired of me. She did it because she'd found something more useful. That night, when she came home, I was sitting at the kitchen table in complete silence. She looked at me, surprised. Why are you sitting in the dark? I didn't answer. I just turned my phone around and pressed play. Her laugh filled the room. That same carefree sound from the grainy highway footage. She froze. I said nothing. And for the first time in months, she was the one too stunned to speak. She didn't sit down right away. She stood frozen by the door with her purse still on her shoulder, like she was waiting for a script to fall into her hands. I could almost hear the gears turning behind her expression, The mental scramble of someone caught so completely off guard they don't know which life fits anymore. Her lips parted once, then closed, then parted again. Still no words. Just that look. "You've been busy," I said eventually. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded thinner, hollower, like the last bit of air escaping from something deflated. I wasn't yelling. I didn't need to. The footage had already screamed for me. She finally moved, setting her purse on the counter like it suddenly weighed 50 pounds. "I can explain." "No," I cut in gently. "You really can't." She crossed her arms. Defensive, but her stance wasn't stable. "That's an invasion of privacy." That made me laugh. A short, broken laugh that felt like it came from a stranger sitting in my place. "You used my credit card to book hotel rooms with men you said didn't exist. You drove my car across state lines with a married executive in the passenger seat. You lied to my face every single night for almost a year. And I crossed the line." She opened her mouth again, but nothing came out. That was the moment I realized something terrifying. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't even angry she got caught. She was angry she couldn't control the narrative anymore. "I should have told you sooner," she muttered, looking off toward the fridge like it might give her cover. "Which part?" I asked. "That you were tired every night, but had the energy to see two other people? Or that the only reason you came back to me was because I shut off your financial leash?" That one hit. I saw her flinch. Just barely. But it was there. Then she did the thing I wasn't prepared for. She cried. Not loud. Not messy. No sobs. Just silent tears sliding down her face while she stared at her own hands. "I didn't mean for it to go this far," she whispered. "At first it was just, I wanted to feel wanted again. And then things spiraled, and I didn't know how to undo it." "You could have talked to me," I said, still barely above a whisper. "Do you know how many nights I sat awake, trying to figure out how to make you feel safe again? How to be enough?" She looked at me then, and that's when I saw it. Nothing. No spark. No grief. No fear. Just detachment. "I don't think I ever felt safe with you," she said quietly. "Not because of something you did, but because I was never built for this kind of life. Routine. Dependence. You were always too gentle. Too patient. I needed more chaos." That was the end for me. It wasn't the cheating. It wasn't the lies. It was that sentence. I had spent years believing I was failing at being a good man, when the truth was, she needed someone who wouldn't care if she came home at all. I got up from the table, not in a rage but in complete calm. My whole body felt weightless, like grief had finally burned through every cell. "The lease ends in 6 weeks, I said. "You'll need to find another place. I've already started moving my things out." "Wait, what?" Her voice finally cracked. "You're leaving?" "No," I said as I grabbed my keys. "I already left. You just didn't notice." And I walked out. No slamming doors. No one chasing after me. Just the sound of my tires crunching gravel as I pulled away from a life that was never mine to begin with. It took her exactly 4 days to text me. The message was short. 2 words. "I'm lost." No punctuation. No explanation. No apology. Just those words, like I was supposed to be the GPS to guide her out of a mess she willingly built around herself. I didn't respond. 3 hours later, another message came in. "Can we talk? Please." Still, I didn't reply. It wasn't out of anger. Honestly, it didn't even feel like a power move. It was just that I had nothing left to say. I'd spoken for years. I had given her pieces of me in every quiet gesture, in every late-night shoulder rub, in every question that started with, "Are you okay?" and ended with her brushing me off. Now I was the one brushing silence across her screen. I stayed with a friend, Levi, a guy I'd known since high school. He didn't ask too many questions, just handed me a spare key and said, "Stay as long as you need. Beer's in the fridge. Don't talk if you don't want to." I didn't realize how badly I needed that. The absence of questions felt like mercy. Meanwhile, she kept messaging. Each day, a little more desperate. "I can't sleep without you. Avery's not who I thought he was. Carter blocked me. And then, finally, you were the only one who ever showed up." There it was, the truth, finally bleeding through her pretty lies. But I felt nothing reading it. I wasn't numb. I was detached. And in that detachment, I found something I hadn't felt in years: control. Not revenge. Not glee. Just the ability to choose whether I would ever let her words into my skin again. Still, the part of me that always second-guessed everything, the soft, apologetic, maybe I was too sensitive part, needed to see her. Not to reconcile. Not to forgive. just to witness her reality now that I was no longer funding it. So I agreed to meet. Neutral ground. A park where the benches faced the lake. Funny how everything kept circling back to water. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting under a crooked oak tree in a coat too thin for the wind. She looked different, smaller, or maybe just like someone whose spotlight had been unplugged. Her nails were chipped. No makeup. Her eyes were swollen like sleep had abandoned her the way she'd once abandoned me. I didn't sit. She looked up slowly, like she was afraid I'd already turned around and left. "I made a mess," she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," I replied. She nodded like she expected that. "You were right. About all of it. I just thought." I don't know what I thought. That you'd always have options, I said. That I'd always be one of them. She bit her lip and looked down at her hands. "I didn't want to lose you." "You did," I said simply. Her eyes welled again. Not theatrical, just quiet, broken. "I wanted to feel powerful." I swallowed. "At my expense." Silence sat between us like a third person. "I'm not here to punish you," I said. "I'm just here so you can stop pretending I vanished." I didn't. I saw everything. I just waited until it was all laid bare. She reached out like she might touch my arm. I stepped back. She froze, hand in the air. "You really won't come back, will you?" "No," I said. "And not because I hate you, but because I finally love myself more than I need you to." I walked away then, my heart pounding, but not breaking. Behind me, she didn't call my name. She didn't follow. That was the first time she truly understood what silence feels like. 2 months later, I sat in a new apartment that still smelled like fresh paint and cardboard. The walls were bare. The couch was secondhand. The TV sat on an overturned laundry basket. And still, I felt more at home here than I ever did in the house we shared. There was something healing about the emptiness. No echoes of slammed doors. No perfume lingering on pillows. No careful calculations about whether I was allowed to ask for affection that night. Just peace. The day I signed the lease, I changed my phone number. I didn't tell her. I didn't leave a note. I didn't need one. She'd said enough. And I finally understood that closure doesn't come from the other person. It comes when you stop looking back for validation from someone who never valued you in the first place. I got back into routines. Small ones at first. Making real breakfast instead of stale cereal. Opening the blinds in the morning. Walking to the park after work with headphones in. I even started sketching again, badly, sure, but freely. One afternoon, I ran into Levi's sister at a bookstore. Her name was Daphne. We'd met once before, years ago, at a barbecue where I stood awkwardly near the grill while she kept making jokes that went over everyone's head. This time, she remembered me. And I didn't fade into the background. We sat in the cafe next door for hours talking about things that didn't hurt to talk about. Her eyes stayed on me, not her phone. Her laugh didn't sound like it had somewhere better to be. We've been meeting once a week since then. We haven't defined anything, and I'm not in a rush. The truth is, I'm not trying to replace anyone. I'm just learning what it feels like to be seen again. Really seen. A few days ago, I finally opened a drawer in my new apartment and found the envelope Wallace gave me. I hadn't thrown it away. Not out of sentimentality, more out of inertia. But that day, I walked to the fireplace, lit a match, and fed it to the flames one page at a time. I watched it burn without blinking. Not because I was angry anymore, but because I knew it no longer had power over me. Clarabelle tried one last time, a single email from an account she must have created after I changed my number. The subject line just said, "Are you happy now?" I didn't open it. Because yes, I am. And the best part is, I didn't need her answer to know it.